Episode 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen picks up right where Episode 2 ended. Riko shows Gojo the picture of Kuroi, all tied up, which was sent to his phone. Kuroi had sent Geto to help Gojo because she feared something even worse might happen to Riko. Geto feels regret for leaving Kuroi alone, and Gojo is very disappointed in his act. He expresses that it doesn't even count as a mistake. Gojo sheds light on the fact that Kuroi's capture could prove fatal for them, as their enemies might use her as leverage. They could demand a trade of Animann for Kuroi or threaten to kill her if Gojo and Geto don't kill Animann. Despite the situation, Gojo believes they have some leverage, as their enemies don't yet possess Riko Animann. He also believes that as long as the kidnappers don't decide the location of negotiation, they can work everything out. Gojo suggests sending Riko to Jujutsu High, with Shoko or someone else standing in as her body double. In response, Riko starts shouting at Gojo, expressing her lack of trust in him and Geto. This angers Gojo, and he questions her about still not trusting them after everything they've been through. In a sad tone, Riko tells Gojo that she's worried about Kuroi not making it to Jujutsu High in time, which could result in her getting assimilated with Tengen-sama, leaving her unable to say her last goodbye. Hearing her concerns, Gojo steps towards Riko and explains that the kidnappers will eventually reach out to them. He warns that if the kidnapper seems smarter than they expect, the chance of Kuroi's survival will decline. To prevent this from happening, Gojo decides that he will leave Riko behind. Riko agrees to Gojo's terms. He also tells her that if she gets scared during the ordeal and wants to go home, they both will ignore her. Unexpectedly, in the next scene, we see Gojo and Riko wearing beachwear, both excited. Kuroi looks at them, and we find out that they are in Okinawa. The beautiful landscape captivates them. Kuroi expresses disbelief at being captured by the Star religious group, who don't even possess superpowers, and she feels ashamed. Geto explains that they caught her off guard, and he takes some of the blame. In a flashback, we see Gojo easily defeating the men who had Kuroi tied up, using his powerful kicks. Kuroi asks how they found her and if they were not attacked. Geto tells her that Satoru has good eyesight and checked everyone on the airplane, while a curse was guarding them from outside the plane. They chose the air route as it was much safer than the land route. Geto is confused about why the kidnappers chose Okinawa, to which Kuroi suggests that they might think Riko won't be able to reach Jujutsu High in time for the assimilation or that they plan to attack them at the airport upon their return. Geto informs her that they didn't accompany them, and we learn that Nanami Kento, a first-year student at Jujutsu High, and Haibara Yu, also in the same year, are present at the airport. Haibara seems excited about the mission. Meanwhile, on the beach, Satoru, Gojo and Riko are having fun. Geto tells Kuroi that Gojo brought Riko to Okinawa to give her some good time as a way of showing consideration. Then Geto asks Gojo to return to Jujutsu High, and Riko becomes sad upon hearing this. Gojo assures Geto that they will fly back tomorrow. Geto asks Gojo if he hasn't slept for a long time and is not planning to sleep today either. Gojo also hasn't released his technique to better guard Riko, but Gojo says it's not that draining for him. He reassures Geto that everything will be okay since Geto is also there. Meanwhile, Haibara informs Nanami that Gojo and the gang are extending their stay for another day, which makes Nanami a bit angry. They all head back to Jujutsu High, and Geto appreciates Gojo for working very hard on the mission. Gojo replies that in the future, he plans to never get stuck babysitting a brat again. Riko is about to give a comeback, but suddenly Gojo gets struck by a sword from behind, and the sword pierces through his body. As Gojo's blood drops from the edges of the sword, Geto gets shocked because they are inside Jujutsu High's barrier. Gojo calmly turns his head towards Toji and asks if they have met before. Toji replies that he is also bad at remembering names and recalls going to see a kid born in the Gojo clan with 6 eyes on the lark. A flashback shows little Gojo noticing Toji standing behind him. Toji explains that nobody has ever noticed him standing behind them, which is why he wore down Satoru and lifted off the bounty to catch him off guard. Gojo and Geto attack Toji, and Gojo assures Geto not to worry since he has strengthened himself with curse energy to prevent the blade from being drawn out. He likens it to passing a safety pin through a knit sweater. At Satoru's demand, Geto takes Kuroi and Riko under Tengen-sama's protection, while Gojo proceeds to take on Toji. During the fight, Gojo realizes there are too many unknown factors about Toji and his techniques. Gojo becomes more serious as Toji seems to possess a heavenly pact granting him physical prowess. Despite fighting with his maximum output, Toji manages to trick Gojo and brutally attacks him. It appears as though our superstar, Satoru Gojo, has been killed by Toji, and it's shocking to see our beloved Gojo fall. In the next scene, Geto, Kuroi, and Riko descend to a secret location using an elevator. Kuroi informs them that this is as far as she can go with them. Kuroi and Riko bid farewell to each other, and Riko shows her affection for Kuroi. Geto then explains to Riko that once she enters a certain point, they will be under Tengen-sama's protection, and no one can harm her except those permitted to enter. Tengen-sama will keep her protected until the assimilation process is complete. Alternatively, Geto offers to take her back home, which surprises Riko. He mentions that their teacher called this process the assimilation, meaning erasing, and indirectly reminds Satoru and Geto that it is a significant sin to commit. They had already discussed it before meeting Riko. Geto had asked Satoru what they would do if the girl refuses to assimilate, to which Satoru replied that they would not proceed with the assimilation. Geto then questioned if Satoru was sure about his decision, as it would mean challenging Tengen-sama. Satoru, with a smile, asked if Geto was scared. After hearing all this, Kuroi reveals that in her childhood, she understood that she was special, and everyone kept telling her that. Even after losing her parents, she didn't feel lonely, and she thought that after the assimilation, she wouldn't feel anything either. However, now she realizes that she wants to live with everyone for more time, experience happiness, and visit different places. As Geto extends his hand to take Riko home, she is about to give her hand to Geto when suddenly she gets shot in the head by Toji. Geto, seeing Toji, becomes angry, confused, and fearful as he asks him what he is doing there. Toji reveals that he killed Gojo Satoru. In response, Geto immediately releases his curse at Toji and angrily tells him to die.